r/askreddit. What evil prank have you pulled off? I used to work for a cruise line. A passenger asked if the crew lives on the ship full time. I and my co-worker explained that no, the crew leaves every night to fly back to Miami and then returns each morning. She walked away satisfied. After that cruise was over, our manager was sharing the passenger evaluations with us and was confused about one in particular. It was a woman who had stayed on deck 14 and had complained that she couldn't sleep at night because of the noise of the crew helicopter. Fact 1. 1,200 crew do not leave every night, but do live on the ship. Fact 2. That ship didn't even have a helipad. Question. WTF was she hearing every night? Someone in the next cabin using helicopter sounds as ambient noise to sleep. Gradually over the course of 2 weeks moved my coworker's monitors closer to the front edge of the desk, like 1/4 inches per move, until they were so close the keyboard barely fit. Stupid small desk, she grumbled near the end. I then moved them back, just as slowly, over a few weeks. She never caught on. People in school used to always take my Gatorade. So I took an empty bottle, filled it with dyed salt water, and let them take my drink. Not gonna lie, it was hilarious watching one person to spit salt water in the middle of class only for their unbelieving friend to do the same. Over a decade ago I worked in the warehouse of a guitar center. We dealt with inventory, shipping and receiving. We had a dumpster behind the store in a shared parking lot that people would leave random things in, even though it was not a public dumpster. One day we found a broken beach chair in an open cardboard box. The box had a shipping label on it. It was left in such a way that it was easy to assume that the chair/box combo was left by the same person. We packed the beach chair in another box and shipped it back to the customer. I wish I was there to see the person's face when they received their trash back via UPS. Haha. I did something similar, but nowhere near this epic. There is a used bookstore that I go to sometimes. This bookstore sells used postcards. I bought a few that had been previously sent 20 to 30 years prior. I then slapped a fresh stamp on them and tossed them into the mailbox. I wish I could have seen the people's reaction when they showed up. I lived in Korea for a bit. When my mom came to visit I told my Korean girlfriend it was an American custom to greet older women by touching elbows. I told my mom the same story about Korean customs. It was a thing of beauty. They were not pleased. Simple, elegant, thoughtfully harmless. The perfect prank 10 out of 10 would recommend. One night I replaced every framed object in my boss's office with a picture of me making a stern face. Posters, certificates, photos, etc. Took like 3 hours because he had like 30 framed things in his office. The next day I made sure I was out doing field work to make him sit with it most of the day. He had a lot of foot traffic to look at his office that day. I worked in an office that had 4 offices with shared partitions that had glass at the top. My neighbor wasn't the most observant person and kind of a dick, so I started printing random pictures like Nicolas Cage and setting them on my side of the office facing into his. He never noticed. It got to the point where everyone else in the office would check what photo I had set that week, but he never caught on. Picked out every last marshmallow from my sister's box of Lucky Charms, then took a photo of me eating a bowl of Just Charms, printed it, and put in the bottom of the bag. I then sealed the bag back up, hot glued the box, and back in the pantry it went. This isn't a prank, this is the work of Satan. I remember it like it was yesterday. At summer camp my cabin's leaders found a little snake that wasn't doing so well, so they decided to put it in an old terrarium in our cabin. A few of the guys were nervous about it, so the next day, when the leaders decided the snake was well enough to release, I asked that they keep quiet about releasing it. When the other guys got back to the cabin and found no snake in the terrarium, chaos ensued. I thought my mom was cool with me having a pet snake. We went weeks without issue. So one night I'm letting it lay on my stomach while I watched TV, and at some point he decided to drop down and check out underneath the couch. His name was Breakfast. Kids are weird, and I say oh man. Breakfast is under the couch. My mom was sitting maybe 15 feet away in our little office space, and she jumps up on the desk chair and starts screaming about the loose snake. Breakfast wasn't allowed out for TV time much after that. My mum's laptop wallpaper was a picture of her granddaughter. I copied the picture 100 times and made her wallpaper a slideshow of the same picture over and over again. So the file would change but nothing would change visibly on the monitor. The pictures would change every 10 seconds. On one of the images I painted a tiny little curly mustache on her. So randomly for 10 seconds my niece would have a mustache. My mum thought she was either losing her mind or had a computer virus, and every time the mustache popped up, it was gone by the time she tried to show anyone. Not a prank I pulled off, but one I was victim to. My manager had left me in charge of the store when I was 16. Not legal, but that's a whole other mess. For a whole weekend. Saturday went well, and I was happy with how I went, although my paranoid brain is always concerned about whether or not doors are actually locked. I'm the same with my house, but the store was worse. So I make my dad drive down to the store to double check that everything is okay. 15 minutes later I get a phone call from him saying manager and the police are here because the door was unlocked and people were inside. Cue to me on the floor in tears hyperventilating while my dad is telling my mum, who had since picked up the phone, that he was only kidding and that everything was fine. How to induce a panic attack 101. Dude was harassing my ex because he used to have a cell phone number. Was being a real fucking creep. Anyways, I created an email address, signed up to Kijiji, and placed an ad offering an 80 inches 3D TV for free with some excuse about a bad breakup and not wanting her to get it. I asked people to only text or call. I then went to bed and forgot all about it until the next day at work. I'd get a text from my ex asking if I had done something on Kijiji. The dude was begging her to take the ad down and apologizing. I checked the email and there were 5 pages of responses, even though I had told them not to email, but to call or text. Dude's phone must have been ringing constantly. I took the ad down and she never heard from him again. I've done something similar. My friend called a for rent sign on a lawn and got yelled at by the guy who answered because she called after hours. It was like 6:30 PM. His online ads had strict instructions for when to call, but his sign, obviously, said nothing. She was really rattled by it. She told me what happened the next day and I got really angry. I considered calling him and yelling at him, but decided to hit him where it hurts. I made an ad on Craigslist for a free car which just needed a new battery. Put up a couple old Honda Civic pictures I found online and put instructions to please only call after 8 PM as I do shift work. Screw that guy. One that was played on me. I took my SATs, college entrance exams, for those outside the US, on April 1st. Should have known right. But apparently, I'm not that smart. That night I went out with a group of friends, and when I got home my mom met me with a serious look on her face. She told me that the testing committee had called, that there had been an error and all test papers from that day were lost. Everyone was being contacted to schedule a date to retake the exam. She totally sold it. Face, reactions, everything. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And she let me believe it until lunchtime the next day. My mom is a diabolical person. Working in a hot factory, supervisor, and job planner in this enclosed cubicle with a window AC unit in the middle of the shop, a nice 68 asterisk in there, while we sweat our ass off in 95, 110 asterisk F heat. Kinda hot and pissy and always flies around. I kept grabbing the flies alive, walking into the cubicle to ask a usually legit question, or say I'm just cooling off, and opening my hand behind my back. I put 14 of those fuckers in there in one shift. He never did catch on I was doing it, and the planner was pissed swatting around. There were so many flies in there. Supervisor was cleaning out every crevice thinking some food is supporting life now somewhere. I used to work at a science tutoring center when I was in college in my gap year before professional school. One of the things we taught very often was anatomy. So naturally we acquired a few skeletons and various skulls with some variation in how they looked or were marked, etc. Well, I was closing one night and I knew my co-worker was opening the next morning early, so before I locked up I sorted all of the skeletons and skulls in a welcome party near the front door. I had one immediately at the opening of the only door into the room with several backup skeletons and skulls just behind at a table together watching on. The best part was that you have to turn on the lights manually, and that switch is immediately to the side of the door opening, so when she reached down to turn on the lights she had to come face to face with some lifeless skeleton skull in the middle of the shady opening. Needless to say she screamed, and it was loud enough to make our boss come to see if she was okay. Woke up to some colorful texts LMAO. Still proud of that one honestly. Out with my flatmates at the pub. One had brought a bunch of mates with him, and they were being quite loud, whereas I prefer a quieter meeting. Still, I was a bit tipsy too. So, I filled one of the spare shot glasses on the table with Vinegar. I assumed when I passed it to him, he'd smell it and realize. Nope, he downed that shit, then coughed and spat it back into the glass. That's it folks, you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video.